Welcome, everybody, to another exciting edition of Freaky Friday on your protection from deception, TFRlive.com. That's Truth Frequency Radio. I'm Joe Joseph, and the usual suspects are all here tonight. That's right, Kev Baker, Scotty Lopez, Jimmy Jeans, Johnny Whistles, and a partridge in a pear tree.
Joe, I love it, man. You know, you hear that music, and just before the music, you're the Joe that myself and the guys know. But then as soon as the music comes on, you're this professional Joe Joseph.
What is that?
It's almost like you've got this like split personality. I love it, dude.
It has to do with cats.
We trigger you with the music, don't we?
There's like some sort of disease that they carry that they say makes you more prone to schizophrenia.
Yeah, I think that's just a good cover for chemtrails killing people.
Totally.
But I'm into conspiracies like that, you know?
You doing okay?
I'm doing good, man. Raring to go. You know, just stood here looking at the horizon. 3 hours of woo in between us and the end of the show. Can't wait.
Yeah.
Gonna beat it, dude.
How about you, Whistles? How's it hanging, man?
I'm doing fine, Joe. Up here in the Kingdom of Fife. And I've actually got a new listener tonight from the Kingdom. Her name is Leanne. And I'm going to be meeting her tomorrow. So
very good.
Johnny goes out and captures people, he puts them in the cellar, and he makes them listen, Joe.
Is that what he calls? Is that what the Goodwill Ambassador does? Is that right? My.
So everybody needs a Goodwill Ambassador. Why not me?
Apparently so. Apparently so. Scotty, how's it hanging, man? Good?
Yeah, been kind of a crazy day, but I'm doing excellent. I'm doing great.
Any thunder snow?
No thunder snow, but we just got done dealing with the polar vortex, and it has finally at least moved away from Kansas today.
Wow.
So
they say some areas are going to see temperature shifts of 80 degrees.
Nice.
Oh, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it, because yesterday it was only like 10 degrees, you know, for our high, and today I think it got up into the 50s. So
yeah, and people don't understand. But yeah, people don't understand what that does. You know, as far as like, you know, the fast melts, and we can get into more of that later because we talked about it last night. As a matter of fact, Kevin and I, about, you know, how this period of time is really in and of itself a very calm period of time relative to the history of the planet, and that weather outside of that has been huge swings in one direction or another. So it's very interesting. Jimmy. Hey, buddy.
Hey, guys. How y'all doing?
Hat on your head.
Oh, you know, I do have a hat on my head today. I've got a fly fishing hat on.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
And there is a trout flying out of the water on one side of it.
Very nice.
You know
a man of many hats.
You know, you're not kidding. When you said that, Kev, you didn't know how right you were.
Exactly.
But, I mean, this week, I got to say, they threw me to the dogs. But at the end of the week, I was the leader of the pack. Jack.
And you just got run over by a truck.
You just got run over by a friggin' 18.
Don't worry. I dematerialized at the right moment. Truck went on through.
Come on, Johnny, take us into the Wookiee cave, man. I know you want to, dude. Come on.
Thanks very much, Scott. Yeah, I'm in there right now, Kev. And we have the usual bunch who's here every Friday. I look forward to seeing everyone again. We start with TFR Wookiee. We've got Silamo, Mr. Joe Joseph, myself. We've got Armand. We've got Bam, Kev Baker, Flipper. We've got Rio. Now, let me take Kev out of the way here to we get to see who's actually in here. Now, we'll get Rio, Non-Profit Freedom, Wu-Tang Man. We'll get Mr. Richie. We'll get Tez. I love it. Tez tickles. We'll get Andrea. How you doing, pal? We'll get Jimmy G, Mr. Darryl Bowles, Freeman8, Dr. Feelgood, Mr. Scotty Lopez, Tory C, Bison, Smelly Pits. We'll get Joseph Skynet. And the last but not least, Kev, Delete the Elite and Paradoxical Anomaly.
Absolutely fantastic. And I think the cold weather It's absolutely decimating the chat room this week. Usually high numbers in there, and of course the cold weather. I think that's where we should probably start tonight, because myself and Joe, we had our say about it last night. But Scotty, talk to us, man. We've not had a chance to speak to you while the polar vortex has been doing its thing.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a record-breaking polar vortex. They're just shattering cold weather, cold temperature records all over the Midwest. I mean, it was probably one of the coldest days we've had in a long time here in northeast Kansas, and we were just on the southern edge of the polar vortex, and we had let's see, what was it, Monday night into Tuesday, I think it's it was something like that. Our wind chills got down to like -30, -25, -30, and it was just they basically canceled school, told people not to even worry about getting out, and because that's extremely dangerous conditions. You don't want kids waiting out at bus stops or anything like that. So I don't know. And I had actually posted on Facebook last night, doing a little speculation and a little pondering. What if the increased severity and duration of these polar vortexes that keep occurring? It seems like, we've been having to deal with this polar vortex every year now, right? For the past, and what's crazy is, growing up, I've never even heard the term polar vortex. This just seems like a very new term, right? Like within the past couple of years, they've been using the term polar vortex. Mm-hmm. It's not something I've known about or, heard referenced as I grew up. So it's I don't know. Maybe they're just putting a new sort of a name on something that was, had more of a scientific name that, they wanted something that appealed more to the public, right? But
I think it's I think it's the shields, because I think there was always a polar vortex. It's just we never heard about it because it used to kind of stay where it should at the pole. And I'm wondering, with all the shenanigans with the magnetic field, I wonder if that's allowing it to wander more, so to speak.
You know what? That's I had a really good sort of thread going on Facebook. I had some friends chiming in and discussing stuff, and because I had I had proposed, what if this increased severity and duration of the polar vortex every year, what if that's the beginning signs of a mini ice age? What if this is the beginning phase of it? And what's really interesting is,
this is how it begins. This is how it starts, Joe. It just creeps up on you, and over time, the kind of winters get longer.
Yeah.
Scott says the polar vortex, the finger comes down further. Yeah, I see this. I'm with you, Scott. Theoretically, I think that's what it is.
But, also, let me just throw this in there, too. And I'm going to give you what science will tell you, is that it's happened a lot. And we just didn't call it that beforehand. But there's been negative temperatures, and there's been cold snaps and everything else. The only problem with that argument is it never been that cold and for that long. And it's been bad. Minus 75 wind chills. I mean, come on.
Come on, Jimbo. What's going on, man?
Well, we got a lot of stuff going on here in Northern California. I was just kind of trying to pull this map up here. We got gale force winds coming in tonight. Supposedly there's going to be hurricane force winds here in the Santa Cruz Mountains. There's a high wind weather hazard emergency preparedness message out for San Francisco Bay Area. And PG&E has a base camp set up like they have been for the last, like I've been telling you guys, every time something's going to happen storm-wise, they come up here, because the power's been going out on and off since these rainstorms, because these trees, these dry rotted trees, they just come down on these lines and knock everything out. So it's been interesting weather. So we'll see what happens tonight. We got all gassed up, and the generators and all that, got everything squared away. And but there, there's been a lot of issues going on health-wise with people. Some older folks having problems with because a lot of times this cold air is dry, and these older folks are on these blood thinners. And I've been hearing some stuff from boots on the ground about grandma getting a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. She had to go to the hospital because she was on blood thinners, and the air was so dry. She had to stay in the house. Had something to do with, the polar vortex coming through. And I mean, some of these temperatures, 70 below zero in Chicago. Scotty, wasn't it like that? Here, I'm going to drop this map in here so you guys can see. I'll drop it in the chat. tfrlive.com/chat is the interactive chat room. You can join us over there.
Well,
interact with us.
We'll get Whistler in. Whistles, how cold is it over in the Kingdom of Fife, dude?
Well, we've got snow line, Kev, so... but it is cold, Kev. It's probably minus, but I think outside just now it's probably about -2. It's nothing major, but I wouldn't like the kind of weather that Scott and that get. Do you know what I mean? That's just that ridiculous temperature to actually try and live in, like -30 and all that. That's weird, Kev.
Well, we're getting our snow on Monday, I think, Scott. We've got a yellow weather warning in place, but it was funny because they were saying the UK was about to get hit with a snow bomb. And of course, the south coast of England, they were struggling after a couple of inches of snow fell. And I was thinking, look at the images that you see over in Canada and the US right now, and we have the cheek to complain about what we're getting over here. But yeah, I'm with you, Scotty. I think this is indicative of that ice age cycle that we keep on going back to time and time again. Myself and Joe listened to a clip, and she was blaming this on, and I'm not making it up, global warming. Yes, the trained meteorologist Scott was saying this is a result of the global warming. You couldn't make this up.
Oh, man. You know what I found interesting, though, is like when you look at the map of the temperatures, right, like while the polar vortex was, really entrenched in, at its, at its worst, if you look at the map, the temperature map, and then you overlay it on top of the ice age map of where the ice sheets were located over North America, they perfectly match. So I think there's something to this. I think, people have also thrown out there, is this polar vortex thing manipulated, right? We're geoengineered. And I think some of that has to do with it. But I also think that we're going through a cycle right now. And I also think we need to kind of figure out what the correlation or what the connection is between the polar vortex and the magnetic field, right? Because we have the magnetic field wandering around, and now this polar vortex is like oscillating around. And actually, I just remembered now, that's what the polar vortex has been called scientifically for years. It's called the Arctic Oscillation. That's what it's called, and that's what it's been known as. And every planet has a polar vortex or a polar storm or a polar wind rotation at its poles. You see it on Saturn, right? It's got that hexagonal storm at the top. Every planet has it because every planet spins and it's going to create some kind of a vortex at its poles. So, it's something that the planet has had since its inception, so, but I wonder if this wandering of the poles, this magnetic pole flip that we could be experiencing, in the near future, I wonder if that affects where the polar vortex wanders, where it lingers. And like I said, we had some really good conversation about this and kind of speculation and just kind of throwing out different hypotheses and stuff like that. But there's definitely something going on, and I think we are entering some kind of cycle that we haven't seen in a while. And like you said, Kev, we're in a very, very calm period, in the grand scheme of things. Earth's history has been an extremely volatile history as far as our climate, our plate tectonics, all of that stuff. We went through some very radical shifts, cataclysmic events throughout Earth's history. And, we're just extremely lucky that humanity, at this point is living in a state where the planet is in a relatively calm, stable sort of mode right now. But, that ride's only going to last so long. And I think we're entering a phase where things are going to start getting a little more crazy.
Well, things were definitely getting crazy here a couple weeks ago before all the snow and everything started. The polar vortex started up, the white beast. Well, here it was raining real heavy. And in Santa Cruz County, there are so many homeless people. It's literally unbelievable. But they don't treat them bad here. So they were kind of all around the river. But when the rains came in, the river got overflown, so they had to evacuate them all out, and they formed this giant camp, okay, right over by this mall. And I think we talked about it at some point that I was going to go down there and talk to somebody. But then it was right after that all these storms came through, and now the thing has grown to like 3 times the size that it was. And right across the highway is a big kitchen where they feed, everybody who's homeless. It's put on by the church or whatever. But point is that a lot of people, that are, outside, they don't even have houses. I wonder what's happening on the East Coast. Are they just, Scotty, do any of you guys know, Joe? What are they doing? Are they going around picking up homeless people and bringing them inside, or are they just
they're trying, or they're going to campsites and dropping off, heavy jackets and blankets and anything else. Because there are some people that just refuse to go. They don't want to go to homeless shelters because of the environment that's there.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the clip we played yesterday, Joe, wasn't it? Somebody in Canada. They didn't want to go to the shelter because they felt safer on the street in this weather.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just absolutely mind-blowing.
Man, you cannot be on the street in 70 below zero.
No, you can't, but some people are willing to take their chances. That just goes to show you the environment that's there when you go,
It shows you how bad it is if you're willing to take that chance.
It's like, think about how desperate the situation is there. You go there, right? Fall asleep. You better have one eye open because you're going to wake up and not have anything left. It's all going to be taken from you.
Yeah, and you better not have tennis shoes. And if you do have tennis shoes, don't take them off. Never take your shoes off. But, it reminds me of the New Orleans. That's a direct experience, I'm telling you right now. I know for a fact that one thing you never want to do whenever you get in a situation like that is take off your shoes. But, hey, I don't know. It's going crazy, Joe. I don't know how they're going to take care of these people. I mean, in Colorado, they don't make you put chains on your car when you drive around in the snow and the ice. They don't make you put anything on there.
Well, they'll just about it. They don't have to worry about it because it's going to be 60 degrees.
Well, yeah, but they'll just dig you out at the end of the winter. They don't care. Yeah. Exactly. You'll stay fresh. But still, I mean, I can't believe that. I mean, the situation here is literally it's critical. I mean, I can't believe that
San Francisco's in crisis. I've never seen anything like the problem that they've got out there. I mean,
is it as bad as it looks, like people defecating in the streets and things?
Well, I'll tell you what, and I'm making this a promise to you guys and to the Freaky Fridays audience. I am gonna, because I'm on the road, okay, I was working in San Francisco 3 days this week. Oakley's, see, hear all these sirens?
Yeah, they're coming for you, Jimmy.
Not they're coming for me. It's just that there's some major thing that happened about 20 minutes ago around here. These trees, I'm telling you, it's a major situation.
Are you like Lex Luthor and you live in the sewers beneath New York City? Is that what it is?
I did. I only come out at night. Out of this.
It's not.
Yeah, no, seriously though, what I was saying though is that I seriously, the homeless situation is literally to the point where I wouldn't doubt that someone somewhere is thinking about rounding people up and putting them in those housing them in those facilities that are already built. Those nice facilities they got over there, Joe. The FEMA facilities they got.
I mean, it's certainly an option and a possibility. And as the weather gets worse, right? And as people lose their ability to, there's a great article today about having a job no longer guarantees you a quality of life, if you will. It just doesn't anymore. And just how much people are actually suffering, and how, like our generation really isn't better off than our parents' generation. It's the first time in a long time that's been that way. And it's very plausible that as a solution to the problem, they do that. They have that environment. Come and work here, and you'd live right on campus, and we'll give you 3 squares a day. You get a dorm room or something like that, right? And you don't have to pay for it. That's part of your. We'll give you like a minimum wage or something like that, and then you'll live here, and you're provided for. Your clothes are provided for, all that stuff, and we got entertainment, and that's it's going to be the new norm, Jimmy. Almost like what you see in China, but a little more appealing. The PR is going to be so much better there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like a super upfront company store scenario when the Great Depression, the grapes of wrath, when you'd go there and pick the vegetables, and they'd say, well, listen, we're going to give you this house. It costs $3 a week to rent the house, and you don't have enough money to rent the house. They don't pay you enough to pay for everything, and you can have credit at the company store. You can go over there and buy food for your family, but then you're indentured to the orchard to pick their vegetables or whatever they're doing. And so that was a model. That's like a business model. And it's the same. I mean, you just extrapolate that out to what we got going on right now. It's pretty much the same exact thing.
Which is exactly what 1984 was all about, Scotty. If you remember that, right? Ingsoc?
That's right. I mean, it's just.
It makes you wonder, as the weather continues to get crazier, and like you said, what if this polar vortex thing, what if it really is the beginning of a mini ice age? And this goes back to like maybe Agenda 21, or was it 2030, or whatever they call it now. If you make it to where people can't just live like in rural areas, right? Like the weather's so bad, right? It's so cold that you have to start forcing the population into high density cities, right? Population centers. And the weather kind of creates this wasteland where people have to kind of congregate together and stuff like that. I'm throwing that one out there, but
very plausible though. Very plausible.
Well, so when I'm up there in San Francisco, I'm gonna take some video, and I'm gonna talk to some people, and I'm gonna bring that back with me, guys, for the show. And I'm telling you, Scotty,
you're gonna bring some homeless guys back for the show?
Well, no, but I did give a homeless guy $20 today. He wasn't asking me for nothing. I saw him on the side of the road stuffing a bunch of plastic bottles into a bag, and I knew he was like trying to count it up to get himself some money. But he wasn't asking anybody for nothing. He had a bike. He had a little trailer thing on the back of it. And I saw him sitting there, and I had made a wrong turn, and I decided that I decided in that moment when I looked at the dude that I just got paid today. I just cashed my check right before I made this wrong turn, and I saw that dude. I went into this parking lot. I flipped a Yui, and I just yelled out to him. I go, yo. And he came over, and I threw him a 20, and I booked. And so, maybe I made that wrong turn in that moment. That might have been the moment for that dude, that he needed to get something to eat. Maybe he did. Or he got what he needed. Maybe he doesn't need to eat. But
yeah, that's Remy Martin. He was living the high life.
Yeah, I saw a sign. I saw a sign in San Francisco. The guy says, "I'm too ugly to be a prostitute and too stupid to be a pimp. But can you spare some change?" Man, I'm telling you, it's seriously, it is a total world outside of itself. You guys, the people that live in the streets. I mean, what happens? You know, you start going backwards. You know, first you're willing to move out of your house and live in your car. And then you have to decide, well, I can't afford the car. Now my car got towed. Now you got to decide that it's okay for you to move out of your car and try to find a place to sleep every night, you know, go into a bar or whatever. And then, you know, it keeps getting lower and lower. Pretty soon you're okay with sleeping out in front of a building, you know, with some dirty blankets. My name's Jimmy.
This is the Kev Baker Show.
Well, we're back. It's Freaky Friday on your protection from deception, TFRlive.com.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's okay. We normally we have traffic that kind of rolls through here from time to time, and it's all good. We'd be talking about, what were we talking about before? Oh, the weather.
Ice Age. It's coming. It's coming day after tomorrow, Joe.
You know,
Willie with food in their stomach, man.
You know what's funny is you know how we were talking biblical prophecy and how it describes quite well what's going on in the world today. Well, another thing that it also tells people to do is don't travel during the winter. If you're in these days, don't do it in the winter because it's dangerous. You're not going to make it. And isn't it interesting? Look at, if you were like nomadic in nature and you had to traverse and or wait out or survive a storm in a tent like that, or even those temperatures, dude, think about it. You're not going to make it, you know? And if you have a situation where there's some sort of collapse scenario or humanity in some way gets knocked back to the Stone Age for whatever reason, like, you know, suspension of nuclear treaties between the United States and Russia, stuff like that.
Yeah, just saying.
You know, just saying. But if something like that were to happen, a solar flare, you know, something like that. Yeah, you could have a situation where, you know, you're just trying to survive. And how do you survive something like that? It's crazy. So, I mean, I get it.
Definitely. Time for the bunker, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on, Scott. Enlighten us.
Well, I'll tell you, you know, I've been utilizing GPS for the last week heavily because I'm relying on it to get to where I'm going. Because I'm not that I don't know the Bay Area, but I'm just relying on this thing, so I don't have to think. It just goes go left, you know. And I've turned into the GPS zombie that you hear about, right? So, but all of a sudden, for the last like week, this GPS has been off. Like, it sends me off in the opposite direction of the actual place that I'm going. And what I was thinking about was, I was, you know, wondering, we've talked so much about the magnetic field and all this over the past few weeks. And it started to make me wonder if there's something going on with these, you know, GPS satellites. What do you guys think?
I don't think the magnetic field would do anything to that, dude. In my layman's terms, I don't think that would affect it. Maybe, potentially, maybe your GPS has just had enough of you, Jimmy. Who knows?
Well, I don't know.
It's just not playing ball with you anymore. But before we get there, Scott, I know you had wanted to jump in, man. And before my Wookiee rudely interrupted you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more point about the polar vortex and how, you know, it's not just a winter thing, right? Because it can affect, you know, it can have this sort of domino effect. And last year, it really, really messed up our spring weather season because it stuck around.
Is that right?
You know, longer. Yeah. Really bad, actually. Our tornado season was pretty much non-existent last year, which, people will be like, well, that's good, right? You don't want tornadoes. Yeah, but also those same storm systems that bring us tornadoes also bring us our rain here in the Midwest. And because the polar vortex stuck around for like a couple more weeks, later than it normally does, that threw everything out of whack, and it just completely messed up our spring rain season. And it didn't seem like we didn't get as much rain, and because the polar vortex is blocking these storm systems that are coming from the west, and they're having to, these storm systems are having to like kind of push around the polar vortex, and the wind, the airflow patterns were completely different, and it just wasn't an environment for bringing rain to the Midwest. So if we start seeing this trend of the polar vortex lasting longer and longer and longer, that's going to have a major sort of domino effect on what happens later on in the year, as far as our weather patterns and everything. It's going to start throwing everything out of whack. And so, we didn't get as many tornadoes last year, which is good, I guess, but we also didn't get as much rain. So, we're going to have to keep an eye on that and see, if this trend continues with the polar vortex, because I think that's going to cause a lot of problems as far as just, agriculture and, our normal weather patterns are going to start getting thrown off because of this.
Well, I think it's interesting too, Scotty, is we take a lot of things for granted. We take for granted that winter is going to end one day, that spring is going to come, or we take for granted the sun's going to come up tomorrow. The sun will be in the sky tomorrow. We take these things to be, pretty much for granted, but there's no telling what might happen. I mean, with this polar vortex, like you're saying, the way it builds on itself, it never thaws, and then it keeps freezing. I mean, I noticed an article earlier in the week of a big, they found a big giant cavern under the ice cap, the Arctic ice caps. So I thought that was pretty interesting. They were trying to say that it was because there was internal heating going on in the Earth.
Yeah, man, I don't know. One year we're just gonna have the polar vortex move in, and it's not gonna go away.
Yeah, I mean, you could, especially if things like that, the Atlantic conveyor, or anything that disrupts the natural cycle of things. Yeah, I mean, it could just like stall, and then that would be bad. That would be very bad.
Yeah, if you think about the Earth and the climate and all of that stuff running like a well-oiled machine, right? You get one component that gets thrown out of whack, then everything is going to fail, and everything is going to start. It's going to be this cascading effect, and
it may also help. Actually, the pole shift. Do you know what I mean? Because that thing is going crazy, and it's in Siberia, and they actually think that it will shift. The two of them will flip. It's just a matter of when.
Right. No, and it is.
They're not seeing any cataclysmic events though, because I think they went back to the last times that they flipped, and there was nothing really of any great importance that happened in the pole shift. So I don't know what it will be like for us, but it wasn't anything in the past anyway.
That work that Randall Carlson did. Got it.
His name is Randall Carlson.
I got it. Yeah, that right there, I think was just pivotal as far as my understanding of how these things are. And like I said, what was striking to me was simply how we've lived in a period of extreme quiet. But over the course of Earth's history, temperature swings in excess of 15 degrees a year were common. So, I mean, you're not here we are pooping our pants over a 2-degree temperature swing. And I mean, you had 18-degree temperature swings year to year averages. I mean, that's crazy. One year it's like you can't grow food. It's icy all year. Next thing, it's like Amazon rainforest hot. Very chaotic, very chaotic. So I wish that scientists would actually look at the record and say, hey, look, this is what's really going on. And this is what's happened in the past. But that's not what they're saying, because if they were to say that, then they would have to acknowledge the fact that cataclysmic events do happen. And when they do happen, man, it wreaks havoc on humanity to the point where, you've got a handful of humans basically that have to survive and repopulate the planet. What were you saying?
So I'm curious, Joe, let me ask you a question, because I know you were in the Navy, weren't you?
Arr.
Okay, so Joe, when I have a GPS satellite, is that GPS based on true north, or is it based on where north? Can north just be programmed into the satellite, or
it's based on a timing system?
Yeah, it's a timing system.
A timing system from the satellite, dude.
I see.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the magnet.
It has to do with triangulating your position. It has nothing to do with It's all position of you on the planet.
Well, hey, talk about being a targeted individual. Okay. Yeah. If you're using GPS on your cell phone, okay, you're tagged, they know where you are. At that point, they could literally send you off, your GPS, you're doing what I'm doing, you're just following the directions. You end up, you know what I'm saying? I mean, just those little things that drive you insane, and now you're in traffic for 3 hours. Those are the kind of things that they do when they gang stalk you, is hack into those type of systems and send you off into weird directions. I mean, I've heard of people actually literally driving off into the water because they were following that GPS system.
Oh, yeah. There are times where there's gaffes. No doubt.
Funny. Me, Mr. No cell phone for all this time. Mm-hmm. I now have a cell phone for 3 weeks, and I'm driving around like a cell phone zombie.
Oh, you know why I do? Because it's so convenient. It's just so convenient. Hey, type in the freaking address and you're not getting lost. You don't have to figure anything out.
Hopefully.
Perfect. Even if you have to drive off a bridge.
Exactly. We were talking about the Ice Age and the South Pole. We mentioned the South Pole last night. Check out this story that I just dropped in the chat room there. This is right up Freaky Friday Street, because it says, before there were dinosaurs, this Triassic lizard king ruled Antarctica. Yes, millions of years before the ground trembled under the feet of the T-Rex. We can debate that in a minute, Joe. The so-called king of the dinosaur. The forested Antarctica was home to an iguana-sized lizard.
Nice.
The ancient reptile was an ankylosaur, part of the same group that would later include dinosaurs, plesiosaurs, and crocodiles, basically. Scientists recently discovered a partial skeleton of the lizard king dating to 250 million years ago, a time when Antarctica was bursting with plant and animal life. So, Joe, 250 million years ago, you buying that?
No. What did they call dinosaurs? What did they call dinosaurs pre-19th century?
Dragons.
Yeah. Okay.
Lizard kings.
Lizard kings. Yeah. Or, Leviathan, Behemoth.
An article about Prince Philip. It's just coded.
Oh my! Yeah, no doubt, the Lizard King, for real. No, but seriously, think about it. These pole shifts happen every 3,500 to 5,000 years. Yeah, I'm sure Antarctica was lush with life at one point in time, but it wasn't Antarctica. It was something else. These cataclysmic events, they happen, and when they do, I mean, everything. It's basically wiped clean. There's very few things that actually survive these events.
It was Atlantis, Joe.
It was Atlantis, yes, before it was Antarctica.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. If we just for a second explored the true history of the Earth, it's so much more exciting and devastating and everything. I mean, the way they teach it is so freaking boring. Yeah. 250 million years ago, the Lizard King, an iguana-sized dinosaur, ruled and walked the earth. An archosaur or archosaur. Okay. What the freaking hell's that? Come on. You know? An archosaur. It doesn't, I guess that sounds like something that really needs to be a king. You know, I guess it's an archetype dinosaur. It's like the next level. I can't even imagine anything that, you know, T-Rex was bad enough.
Do you think they're going to bring them back? I think they're going to reanimate. Of course you can. Imagine you got all those bones, you get a bit of DNA from somewhere. And if you go down, remember, if you've got enough of the ancestral line, technically you should have enough of that kind of ancestral DNA where you can work backwards, right? Remember? We covered that before.
But their DNA is all based on a time when the Earth had different atmospherics, different pressures, different everything.
It's okay. We just take the genetics of a blue chicken, a chupacabra, and me. We splice it up together, and it's fine.
I guess you're right.
That's why you had to be 12 feet tall with one of those giant swords.
Exactly.
You could just chop the heads off.
Johnny, we know about giant swords, don't we?
Oh, yeah, definitely in Scotland. There's some big swords here.
I
was just thinking, was there any dinosaurs about when the countries all split apart and sent Scotland to the worst place on the planet?
I don't think so, dude.
No.
I don't think so, but maybe. I know they keep finding big dinosaur bones up in Skye, John.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's like the oldest kind of, it's kind of set back their timeline because they didn't realize there were dinosaurs of that type in that area of Europe. So yeah, we've got a kind of, not a rich history of dinosaur finds, but in recent times, Joe, absolutely. But back to the swords, this is a bit of a mystery because your average guy in Scotland, we're not exactly like the basketball players you see over in the US, Joe, right?
Right.
You go to a museum, and if you go and look at like Wallace, his sword, these old claymores that these so-called warriors in Scotland used to run about with, dude, they're literally the size of me and Johnny Whistles.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the size of man it would have taken, not only to fight with that, but just to carry it. There's something wrong somewhere. It suggests to me that, and John, you can back me up here, dude. You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
these people were taller, and I don't just mean like 6'2", 6'3". These were like strapping, like almost, I would have to say, guys, you're bordering on giants.
Mm-hmm. Pure Scottish beef.
Yep. So what do you make of that? It's a weird one, Joe, and I suppose you'd have to really see it to appreciate what we're talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
I remember as a wee boy, though, you know, you'd go to a museum, you'd look at this thing, and you'd think, right, we were fighting the English with swords that size?
That size. What happened?
What was going on?
Yeah, like what happened? Are we like that big of pansies now? You know?
It's almost like one of these out-of-place artifacts, Joe. It's
right.
Weird. Do you know what I mean?
Well, but you know, maybe it gives credence to the fact that giants walk the earth and that they walked the earth at a time when it wasn't as far back as you might think. It wasn't millions of years ago. It was 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or whatever. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That the history paints a different picture, and when you know the truth, well, then now all of a sudden that sword isn't so out of place, you know? But
well, certain types of people were around at that time, and these were not ape-like warriors in the slightest. These were Nordic style, the same bloodlines that you see throughout Europe now, especially in the area where Kev lives and also in Ireland. You see these same bloodlines that are descendants from a whole other civilization, Joe. And that's why you see so much of a reflection of the same types of technologies and esoteric information coming out of just Kev's area alone, and Ireland as well.
Heavy there. Yeah.
I'm dropping some pictures in the chat room for you guys. I'm going to drop another one in here. But yeah, these guys are just stood there like very ceremonial with what looks to be, I mean, the guy, the second picture, that sword's up to his face. I mean, where are you putting that?
How do you build something like that?
Exactly. Where are you carrying that to take it into battle?
Exactly. Even putting it on your back. I mean, it doesn't flex. It's heavy steel, heavy iron. Good grief, man.
That's what I'm talking about. That's just not right, is it?
No, logistically speaking, it's a nightmare for anybody that's normal human size.
Exactly.
Just brings that whole.
My brother collects swords, and he has a claymore, and it is huge. It is absolutely massive.
That's what we're talking about. Now we know why the Romans took one look and thought, "Oh hell no!"
Oh right.
Well, also, who is he who can pull Excalibur from the stone? It brings that whole myth into a new sort of
right.
light.
Like, was it a Nephilim or something like that? A giant.
That's what I'm talking about. You're right.
Yeah. Wow.
And that's what I mean when I say the mixing of these different human types or archetypes. I mean, I don't know if the original DNA from these so-called fallen ones or the sons of Cain, as they're called, or the tribe of Dan, these bloodlines, wherever they appeared around the planet, there were jumps in evolution because they had domesticated animals and they had ways of growing crops and they had knowledge of astronomical and astrological systems that they were able to know when certain events were going to happen at that point. So you see the same reflection of all of these natural principles that resonate throughout these different cultures, Joe, don't you? Like down in Peru, you see it in the Mayans.
Yeah, you sure do.
And you see it, I've even heard tales that there's even something in the Grand Canyon that they found. I'm not 100% on any of the world.
All over the world.
And they need to be slayed with a Scottish claymore. That's what we're kind of figuring out here. But yeah, no, this has always troubled me, Johnny. I mean, take the wee man to the museum years ago. Back to the time when I used to go to museums, dude. It's one thing that's always troubled me. How on earth's name did anyone fight with these big, huge, gigantic swords?
Yeah, and Kev, not to mention, they had a shield in the other arm as well.
Yep.
Now, how can you swing that thing about with one hand?
I don't get it.
It would be impossible.
I just don't get it. I don't get it, man. There's something going on somewhere. And of course, the UK, lots of stories of giants over here. I mean, you got the Giant's Causeway for a start, John. You got all the kind of cool hexagonal stone things going on.
Yeah, the Irish have always had, they've talked about giants for hundreds of years, Kev.
Yep.
I mean, there's some Irish myth that some giant was throwing stones. It was to kill some other giant that was against their tribe or something. It was, I mean, as we know, when there's a legend, there's always some sort of truth in there somewhere.
Johnny,
it's just finding it.
Absolutely. And like you say, there is a rich kind of history of stories of giants over here. With giants all around the world. I remember we had on, Jim Vera? And try to remember the other chap's name, but they wrote a book about all the giants. They came on Freaky Friday one time. That was fascinating stuff. And yeah, I do think there was, I'm not saying the people in Scotland were all giants per se, but they certainly weren't built like me and Johnny back then, that's for sure. What do you think, Jimmy?
I just think, I'm sitting here thinking back to myself because I spent so many hours listening to, shows back in the day. And I just remember I'm thinking two characters are coming to my mind right now and everything that we've just been talking about. The first one is David Icke and the second one is Steve Quayle. Because those two characters, when they were on Alex Jones's show, all they could talk about anything they wanted to, except David Icke couldn't talk about lizard people, and Steve Quayle couldn't talk about the giants, because those two things made other people think that their information was false. But as it turns out
there for giants to be a thing to talk about. Absolutely.
And then it turns out that the giants and the lizard people, Kev, are the real information that these guys were trying to get out, and people never really took it to heart. But it turns out that if you look back at some of these myths and some of these legends, that they tie in almost exactly with what those two characters have been saying for many, many years.
No, absolutely. And what Doc Miller on the other night, he was talking about his adventures at the South Pole. I could listen to him talking about the South Pole for a show, but he got into speculating about what the big kind of attraction was down at the bottom of the world, when we were all guessing as to why all these important people were rushing down there to go and see this or go and see something. And again, the doc, he actually brought up the giants. And he admitted it was pure speculation, but at the time he was down there, he did know that there was a large circular hole, an opening. I think he talked about 100 kilometers deep, 100 miles deep. And his speculation was this was one of these giants, one of these mighty men of old, if you want to put it that way, whether it was held in stasis, whether they'd figured a way out to get how to get down to it at that depth with the pressures. But he honestly thought something had happened, and it was related to do with something with the giants. It's weird how these giant stories keep on coming up, and it's even weirder if you start to think, there's a possibility, there's just a chance that maybe they're not stuff of ancient times. We've talked about that giant of Kandahar before, and you can take it or leave it. You talk about the giant at the South Pole now, take it or leave it. I tell you what, there's definitely something to these giant stories. We'll be back for hour number 2. Don't go anywhere.